Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the Gospel of John. We're in John chapter 18. Today we're going to start reading at verse 10. Now, the first 9 verses of John 18, we've seen that Jesus, after he shared the Passover meal with the disciples, after he prayed for them, had gone to the Garden of Gethsemane for prayer. And it was there that Judas had brought the detachment of soldiers from the Sanhedrin to arrest Jesus. When they come, Jesus told them, I am the one you're looking for. Let these others, my disciples, go. But Simon Peter initially resists. Let's notice what happens in verse 10. Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it, and he struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. The servant's name was Malchus. Jesus commanded Peter, put your sword away. Shall I not drink the cup that the Father has given to me? So Peter initially wants to fight back, and he draws his sword and strikes out, and he hits the ear, cutting off the ear of one of the servants of the high priest. Now, we're told in one of the other Gospels that after Jesus tells Peter to stop, we're not going by the power of the sword. We're told in the other Gospel that Jesus heals the servant. That's not mentioned here. But interesting here is mentioned the name of the servant. We are told that his name was Malchus. That's an interesting little note. John, who writes the Gospel and who was there, knows the name of the servant. He knows it is Malchus. Now, does that mean he knew who he was before, that he had some familiarity with some of the servants of the high priest, so he knew he was Malchus? Or does it mean that he came to know Malchus later? We don't know. It's interesting speculation what happened to Malchus after this event. First, he was injured by Simon Peter, and then we know from the other Gospels that Jesus healed him. And his name is mentioned here in the Gospel of John. Could it be that this was a life-changing event for him? Could it be that perhaps later Malchus becomes a follower of Jesus? Could it be that one of the servants who came to arrest Jesus, as a result of Jesus healing him, comes to realize perhaps who Jesus is, and maybe later he comes to faith? We don't know. We don't know. I'm just speculating, but I think it's interesting that perhaps later he does become a follower of Jesus, a Christian, and that's why his name is given. That's why his name is known. I wish we knew that for a fact, but it would certainly make an interesting part of the story if the servant, one of the servants who came to arrest Jesus, later becomes a follower because of what Jesus did. The fact that they know his name, that John knows his name, kind of suggests to me that maybe later on he does become a follower. But be that as it may, he's injured on the scene. We know Jesus heals him, and Jesus says to Peter, we're not going by the way of the sword. Then, verse 12, then the detachment of soldiers with the commander and the Jewish officials arrested Jesus. They bound him, and they brought him first to Annas, who was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest that year. Caiaphas was the one who had advised the Jewish leader it would be good for this one man to die for the people. So what they're doing, they arrest Jesus, they do let the other disciples go, and they take Jesus to a meeting of the Sanhedrin. Now it seems there are 2 meetings. First they go to the home of Annas, and then they go to Caiaphas. Taking this with the other Gospels, we know there are really 2 different meetings. Now Caiaphas is the high priest. We had met him earlier in the Gospel of John, where he had made the comment, we need to do away with Jesus. It's better for one man to die than for the whole nation to perish. That was a prophetic word, John told us, even though he did not realize it. But Caiaphas was one who spoke that. He's the high priest. Annas is his father-in-law. Now, why did they take them first to Annas, then to Caiaphas? It seems in this period of history, there was one family that sort of controlled the high priesthood. The Roman governor would appoint the high priest each year. It would usually change from year to year, but the one family seemed to be in some control of it, and Annas was sort of the power in that family. He himself had been high priest in the past. Now his son-in-law Caiaphas is high priest, but Annas is really the one behind the scenes calling the shots. He is the power behind the throne. That's why they first go to Annas, and then they go to Caiaphas, who is actually high priest that year. Jesus is going to stand trial before the Sanhedrin during the night. In the morning, they're going to send him to Pilate, the Roman governor. But first, he appears before the Jewish ruling council, the Sanhedrin. So they are the ones who sent the guards, the temple soldiers, to have him arrested and to brought back to appear before the Sanhedrin. They're going to charge him, of course, with blasphemy, but they're working, of course, they want to eventually send him to the Roman governor because they want him executed, and only the Roman authorities could provide execution. But Jesus taken first to Annas and then to Caiaphas to stand trial before the Sanhedrin. Join us tomorrow as we continue looking at these events of the night Jesus was arrested, the night before the crucifixion. So join us for our next 5-minute Bible study in the Gospel of John.